Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, one of the administration's most uncompromising critics of Russia, said last week that the Kremlin's meddling in elections in the United States and Europe is part of an active threat of a recently resurgent Russia. This week, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster tore into Russia for pioneering new generation warfare involving campaigns of subversion and disinformation and propaganda to pit Americans against each other and destabilize democracies. The remarks by two key members of the Trump administration's national security team reflect a growing concern that Russia is expanding its influence around the world at a time when the Western pillars of Europe and the United States are focused on their own domestic problems. Against that backdrop, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace is about to launch a 2-year analysis of Russia's activist foreign and military policies, called The Return of Global Russia, a reassessment of the Kremlin's international agenda. The project aims to spotlight ways in which the Kremlin's influence has spread far beyond Russia's immediate neighbors and is rooted in countries throughout Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Obviously, the Russian role in the U.S. election and what Rex Tillerson referred to as the use of hybrid warfare has generated much attention in the wake of Ukraine and the events around the election, said Andrew Weiss, who oversees Carnegie's research on Russia and Eurasia. What needs to be assessed is seeing the broader level of Russian foreign policy ventures. It's our ambition to see what patterns emerge, and how it's likely to evolve. Russia's alleged interference in the 2016 U.S. election, a matter being investigated by congressional committees and special counsel Robert S. Mueller III, grew out of suspicions in Russia that it was itself under siege. According to Weiss and Paul Stronsky, a fellow in Carnegie's Russian and Eurasia program, the Kremlin thought that mass protests in Moscow in 2012 were propelled by Western efforts to promote democracy in Russia, and ultimately to bring about regime change. 2 years later, Russia annexed Crimea and bolstered pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine. Weiss and Stronsky say Moscow is trying to systematically undermine democracies such as the United States and alliances like the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It has set about making deals and offering financial aid to friendly governments and interfering in countries that it perceives as adversaries. Depending on the region, it can find markets for Russian military equipment, unchain Moscow from the isolation imposed by sanctions over its intervention in Ukraine, or simply be a thorn in the side of one of its chief adversaries, Washington. The Soviet Union fought the Cold War in Nicaragua. Now Putin's Russia is back. In the past year alone, Russia has provided debt relief and wheat to the embattled Maduro government in Venezuela and has built facilities in Nicaragua to train Central American forces to combat drug trafficking. In the Middle East, besides sending warplanes that helped the Syrian government beat back Islamic State militants and anti-government rebels, it has forged a partnership with a warlord in Libya and conducted joint military exercises with Egypt.